My stepmother didn't shout, she declared it. Standing in the garage doorway, rain pounding behind her, she locked eyes with me and said, "Get out of my house." No trembling, no regret, and my father. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor like losing me was easier than lifting his head. So I walked into the night with nothing but a duffel bag and a promise I didn't dare say out loud. Years later, when they showed up at my office door expecting money, they had no idea the girl they threw away wasn't the one opening it. But that's not even the part that shocked them most. I wasn't always the woman people see now, confident, self-built, hard to shake. Before the office views and the awards on the wall, there was a 12-year-old girl trying to survive the kind of silence that can hollow out a home. My mother died suddenly, a brain aneurysm that stole her in a single morning. One minute, she was humming Motown while flipping pancakes the next. The house felt too big for its own walls. My dad and I tried to keep moving, heating frozen dinners, sorting laundry. We never folded right, pretending we weren't drowning in the quiet she used to fill. For a while, it really was just him and me. He'd come home from the auto shop smelling like motor oil, ruffle my hair, and tell me I was stronger than I knew. I believed him. I needed to. Then he met Frances, a waitress with sharp hazel eyes and a smile that always felt calculated. She came into our house fast, too fast. A courthouse wedding, 3 suitcases, a cat that immediately took my mother's old rocking chair like it owned the place. At first she acted sweet, rearranging the pantry, reorganizing closets, trying to mold our home into hers. But sweetness was just the opening act. Frances became the keeper of every dollar that entered the house. She questioned receipts, circled grocery items in red pen, sighed loudly whenever I poured a glass of milk. My father, tired from double shifts, let her. Maybe he thought letting her handle the numbers meant things were finally under control. Maybe it was easier than confronting her. Maybe he thought choosing peace meant choosing her. Either way, he didn't choose me. The girl I was back then tried hard. I wanted the house to stay calm, the air to stay warm. I folded laundry, set the table, clipped coupons for her grocery lists, worked babysitting jobs on weekends, and handed her my crumpled fives like offerings. She barely looked up. My grades soared, A's stacked on the fridge like proof that I was worth keeping. But Frances would tap the report card with a manicured nail and say, "Good. College isn't cheap." My dad would smile weak and apologetic, then look at her as if waiting for permission to be proud. By 13, the house rules were hers. Curfews, chores, a rotation of tasks that would make a diner manager flinch. I tried to hold on to pieces of my mother, a faded hoodie that still smelled like her lotion, the rocking chair she used to read to me in. Frances called them clutter. One day, they simply disappeared. My father helped her load the chair into the trunk without meeting my eyes. That was the first time I felt something in me break. And yet, I stayed. I tried. I told myself families could be fixed if you worked hard enough. I didn't know then that some people don't want family, they just want control. And I was becoming too old and too aware to be controlled for much longer. The older I got, the tighter Frances tried to pull the reins. By 16, I'd learned to read the shift in her voice the way sailors read storms, soft at first, then sharp enough to cut through whatever hope I was still holding on to. Money became her favorite weapon. Every grocery trip turned into an interrogation under the kitchen light. She'd hold receipts like evidence circling Apple's yogurt, even off-brand cereal, as if I'd committed crimes by eating. "Extras aren't in the budget," she'd say, sliding the paper across the table. My father would clear his throat, look anywhere but at me, and let her decisions stand. School wasn't an escape. It became leverage. I needed poster board for a science fair project. $3. She told me to earn it myself. So I mowed the neighbor's lawn for $5, came home sweating and proud, and watched her take most of it for household costs. She handed me back a single dollar like it was charity. Birthdays vanished. Mine passed without a card, without a candle, without a moment that felt like I mattered. I baked brownies from a mix with money I'd saved from babysitting, shared them with neighbors who remembered my name better than my own father did. Frances took one, complained about the calories, and asked if I'd factored in the cost of cocoa powder. Still, I held on. I kept telling myself she'd ease up, that my father would eventually see what was happening, that if I stayed patient, stayed quiet, stayed good, something would shift. But the house only grew colder. The real turning point didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived quietly in a single sentence that snapped the last thread holding our family together. I had just come home from school clutching a history test marked 98% in bright red ink, the kind of grade I used to celebrate. My father was in the recliner, Frances perched on the armrest flipping through paint swatches for what used to be my mother's sewing nook. When I stepped forward holding out the paper, Frances didn't even look at it. She just said, almost casually, "One income, one child. That's the plan now. Blood or not, grown girls need to stand on their own 2 feet." My father opened his mouth as if to object, then closed it. No words, no defense, no recognition of the effort I'd poured into every A, every chore, every dollar I brought home. In that moment, I realized something crucial. Frances wasn't trying to build a family. She was narrowing the house until there was no space left for me at all. And my father, whether through fear or loyalty, was going to let her. I didn't leave that day. People assume turning points come with explosions, shouting doors, slamming someone storming out into the night. But real breaking points, they're quiet. They settle into your bones long before anyone else notices. They remake you from the inside out. After Frances announced that the house had 1 income, 1 child, something inside me went still. Not numb, clear. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally understand a truth you've been trying not to see. I wasn't part of this family anymore. I was an expense, a burden to be minimized until I either broke or disappeared. So I made myself disappear on my own terms. I started small. I worked more shifts at the fast food place off Atlantic Boulevard, slipping my uniform into my backpack before heading out each morning. Frances assumed I was lingering at school. My father never asked. I saved every tip that didn't get snatched out of my hands, hiding the cash in a coffee can labeled college and stashing it under the loose floorboard beneath my bed. I studied harder than ever, not because I hoped Frances would notice, but because I needed a future she couldn't reach. History summaries scribbled on index cards, marketing blogs printed in the school library, college brochures tucked behind textbooks so Frances wouldn't find them and call them wishful thinking. At home, I learned to blend into the background. I moved quietly, spoke softly, avoided fights, not out of fear, out of strategy. I realized something powerful at 16. Silence is camouflage. When you stop reacting, people who thrive on control can't find leverage. They can't twist the knife if you stop bleeding for them. So when Frances nitpicked the price of fruit, I nodded. When she took most of my babysitting money, I let her. When she bagged up half my clothes for donation, I folded the empty drawers without a word. She thought she was winning. What she didn't know was that I was building something she couldn't see, something she couldn't stop. My quiet plan. By 17, I had mapped out my escape down to the hour. I applied for scholarships in the school computer lab during lunch. The guidance counselor helped me format my essays, believing every word of my self-motivated, highly disciplined persona. She didn't know those traits were survival mechanisms. I researched community colleges in St. Augustine, the closest place I could imagine rebuilding a life. I figured out the bus routes. I checked which campuses had work study. I printed everything, slid the papers between pages of a novel Frances would never touch. But the most important part of the plan wasn't the scholarships or the grades or even the money hidden under my floorboard. It was my Aunt Dana. She was my mother's younger sister, the only adult who still wrote me birthday cards even when Dad forgot to mention it. Sometimes she'd call the house, her voice warm, with the kind of love that isn't loud but steady, like a porch light that never burns out. I never told her how bad things were, but she always knew enough to ask questions in the soft way nurses do when they're searching for the truth behind your answers. One night, standing alone in my room, listening to Frances criticize the electric bill through the wall, I wrote Dana a letter. Not a confession, just the facts. Just enough to say I might need you soon. I sealed it, hid it in my backpack, and waited for a moment when Frances wasn't watching the mailbox like a hawk. That letter was my lifeline before I even knew how much I'd need it. Things escalated fast after that. Frances found my college brochures while cleaning. She waved them like contraband. This fantasy isn't in the budget. Be realistic, Kayla. My father stood behind her, rubbing the back of his neck, eyes tired. No one asked why a 17-year-old should already understand the weight of mortgage notices and grocery receipts. The next week, she found the envelope of tips I'd saved. She didn't ask, it simply became car insurance money. My father watched without speaking a single word. That was the moment I understood I couldn't wait to turn 18. I couldn't wait for scholarships. I couldn't wait for a future she hadn't approved. My path wasn't something I would step into someday. It was something I needed to run toward now. The night everything happened, the night she ordered me out of the house, wasn't a surprise. Not really. When someone spends years pushing you closer and closer to the edge, you eventually learn how to land on your feet. As Frances shouted in the garage doorway, telling me to leave tonight, not tomorrow, I felt a strange calm settle over me. She thought she was staging a final blow. She thought I'd break, cry, beg, but she didn't know I had already planned my exit. She thrust a duffel bag into my hands, then a bus ticket. One way. Your aunt knows. My father hovered behind her, his silence familiar, almost expected. I stepped into the Florida night with only one thought: I'm ready. The bus station smelled like metal and coffee. The ride was long and dark, but I watched the streetlights flash past like mile markers leading me toward the life I'd been building in secret. When Dana opened her door hair in a messy bun, flannel pajamas, eyes wide with worry, I stepped into the warm glow behind her and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, safety, possibility. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't demand proof. She simply said, "You're staying as long as you need." And for the first time since my mother died, I believed someone, because the quiet plan I'd built piece by piece had finally carried me to a place where I wasn't a burden, where silence didn't punish, it protected. I didn't know it then, but everything that came next, the success, the power, the revenge, would grow from that moment when I realized I wasn't helpless. I was free. Success didn't land on me overnight. It built itself through years of late nights, community college classes, small marketing gigs that slowly turned into real clients, then into a portfolio, then into the agency I run today. By 32, I had a full team, a downtown office overlooking the water, and the kind of stability I used to dream about when I was 17 on a Greyhound bus. I thought that the life I built, was finally protected, but the past has a way of finding the door. I was in a meeting when my receptionist buzzed, voice uneasy. "Kayla, your family is here." The word froze me. Family. I opened the security feed. There they were. Frances stiff in a floral blouse, clutching her purse like armor. My father a few steps behind her, hands deep in his pockets, eyes glued to the floor, same posture he wore the night he let me go. "Send them up," I said. They emerged from the elevator as if entering a hotel lobby, not the business of the daughter they abandoned. Frances took in the glass walls, the awards, the team area, humming with work. "So this is where you ended up," she said. "Impressive. You did well for yourself." My father gave a shy nod. "We're proud of you." The words landed hollow. I stayed standing behind my desk. "What do you want?" Frances didn't hesitate. She sat down uninvited, pulled out a manila folder stuffed with printouts, articles about my company, revenue estimates, screenshots of interviews I'd done. "We've been researching," she said. "A successful woman like you can understand the pressure we're under." She slid a page across my desk. A number written in thick marker, $150,000. "For a condo," she explained, "and Wayne's medical needs are piling up. Family supports family." My father added quietly, "It'd really help us, Kayla. You can afford it." Something inside me stilled. Not fear recognition. The same entitlement Frances wielded in Jacksonville. The same silence from my father, as if the years between us had never happened. "No," I said. Frances blinked. "No, but I'm not giving you anything." Her smile cracked. "You owe us. We housed you, fed you, raised you." "You kicked me out," I said evenly, and he watched. My father flinched. Frances scoffed. "That was a misunderstanding. Look how independent it made you." "That wasn't independence," I said. "That was survival." She leaned forward. "We drove all this way expecting respect." "You drove all this way expecting a payday." Her voice rose. Ungrateful girl, I pressed the intercom button. Security to my office. Frances shot to her feet. You're throwing out your own family. You made that choice for me 15 years ago. 2 guards stepped in. Calm professional, please escort them out, I said. Frances screamed all the way to the elevator. Insults, accusations, rewrites of history. My father mumbled my name, once barely audible, before the doors closed. When the elevator sank out of sight, the office fell into a calm I'd never known as a teenager. A chosen silence, a controlled one. But the confrontation wasn't over. 3 weeks later, after a client lunch, I walked out to the parking lot and found my car blocked by a beat-up sedan. Frances burst out, face-twisted voice shaking with rage. "You think this is over?" she yelled. "You will give us that money." My father stayed in the driver's seat, eyes fixed on the steering wheel, doing what he'd always done, nothing. Frances came closer, grabbing my arm hard enough to wrinkle my sleeve. "You owe your blood." I stepped back. "You're violating the restraining order." Leah beside me was already recording. Police arrived within minutes. Frances was handcuffed, still shouting my name like a curse echoing down the street. My father never stepped out of the car. As the cruiser door shut on her, her voice fading behind the glass, something inside me finally settled. Not triumph, not revenge, just closure. And the knowledge that this time the door closing wasn't hers, slamming on me, it was mine locking the past out for good. The strange thing about closure is that it doesn't arrive with applause. There's no cinematic swell, no triumphant soundtrack, no moment where the world acknowledges what you've survived. It comes quietly, almost shyly, like a change in the weather. You only notice it when you realize the air isn't heavy anymore. After Frances's arrest, after the paperwork and statements, and the kind of conversations no one ever imagines having with police officers, I went home and sat in the stillness of my living room. No chaos, no raised voices, no footsteps pacing outside my door. Just silence, not the silence I grew up with, the suffocating kind. This one felt earned, owned. For years, I'd carried the shadow of that garage night inside me, the slammed door, the bus ticket, the weight of my father's silence. It shaped how I worked, how hard I pushed, how fiercely I protected anything I built. I told myself that success would erase the memory, that achievement would unwrite the narrative of being unwanted. But when I looked out my window that night, watching the streetlights flicker across the pavement, I realized something: success doesn't heal abandonment. It only gives you the tools to face it. What healed me was the boundary. Choosing myself when they expected me to fold, standing firm when they counted on the girl I used to be, saying no out loud with witnesses, with confidence, with laws on my side. That changed something fundamental. I thought about Dana, the woman who stepped out into the rain in flannel pajamas to pick me up at a nearly empty bus station. The woman who cleared a room for me without hesitation, who never asked for repayment, who never made me feel like a burden. She didn't save me so I could grow into someone who tolerated less than I deserved. She saved me so I could build something better, and I had. The company, the team, the life I realized, they were never about proving Frances wrong or earning my father's love back. They existed because I chose not to let their version of me become the truth. As I sat there, a quiet clarity settled over me. Blood may shape your story, but it doesn't get to write the ending. I do. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from winning, it comes from finally choosing yourself. My stepmother's voice, my father's silence. The years of being treated like an afterthought, none of it defines me anymore. The door they closed on me at 17 no longer hurts. It only reminds me how far I walked without them. And the truth is, simple blood doesn't build a family. Behavior does. If you've ever had to draw a line to protect your peace, tell me what part of my story hit you hardest. Comment your city and subscribe for more stories of breaking free from toxic ties.